All right. So, hello, my name is Heidy Canales, and I am interviewing
Yesenia, Cano.
for the Latinx Oral History Archive on January 4th, 2022. So again, thank you for taking the time to do this interview. I very much appreciate you. And to get this interview right into the swing of things, can you tell me just a little bit about yourself, like your background, where and when you were born? Tell me a little bit about where you grew up, your family structure. Did you move around a lot? How big was your family? Just kind of a background of who Yesenia is.
Okay, so I was actually born in Pennsylvania, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, in March 22nd, 1996. I had two parents. My parents are both immigrants from Peru, and they immigrated in like the 80s. So they actually immigrated into to Jersey, but then my dad had a job that moved him to Bethlehem. And a lot of my family also worked at that same place. So we all like immigrated to Bethlehem, and they eventually like slowly came and immigrated and stayed there. So I just have a whole bunch of family basically in Bethlehem in the Lehigh Valley. And my mom, I grew up with the majority of my dad's side of the family. So he has like seven siblings, and their children. And my mom, she's slowly like bringing over her family. So I have my uncles and aunts. On her side, like I was with them a lot later in my life when I was like a teenager and to now. So it was nice to have like a big family. And I think most Latinos are very like family based, and that was definitely like a thing that was like that was always around because we were just all in the same city or the same town. Lehigh Valley is like an interesting place because it's kind of it's right next to Allentown, so there is a huge Latino population. Bethlehem has less of a Latino population, but there is some diversity. So I grew up around that, and around like our south side has a lot of like immigrants. So the history is like that there was Polish immigrants back in the day, like a couple like decades ago, and now it's more of like a Latino people who are immigrating there and living there. So I was around a lot of like Latinos and just in general like other cultures. Yeah, I think that was for the most part like that. It was a good experience. I also like my school system too was really good as well. Like my school district, I was in high school. I think it was like a big pivotal moment for me to like get involved into like the Latino community there, or like our Latino school club, because it kind of showed me like a different perspective of like what it takes to get into college and stuff. So my parents were always like, you need to go to college, you need to go to college. And I think joining that club and kind of seeing what other students were doing kind of allowed me to kind of envision that a lot more, and allow me to kind of like think about it in a way that like my parents were not able to provide me because they were immigrants, right? Like my parents also like they didn't have I believe my mom didn't graduate high school and my dad did, and we come from like an indigenous community in Peru, so like they were just like they immigrated here to leave poverty, and they were just very much like go to college, like just study. Like they didn't want me to get a job or anything because they didn't want me to like get so used to working that like I didn't want to go to school. Like I was so like in the way that like, oh, I just wanted money type of thing. And so I feel like that was so much of my life where it was like go to college, but I didn't entirely know what that looked like until high school. But then even in college, I didn't really knew what that looked like. So there was still like some sort of like struggle and learning curve with like every single thing I did. But at the same time, like I also found community and like in high school because there were other kids who were also like on the same like path of trying to go to college and not necessarily knowing what that looks like. And we would kind of like help each other out and study or like compete even, because we would be like trying to get into honors classes or AP classes. And then we would be comparing like, you know, our grades and or homework answers, and then being like, who got the best grade? And then that like motivated me even more because I'm really competitive sometimes. And so it was just nice to have that and not fully go through it alone. And I think that's a lot of the reason why I've gotten to where I am now, because I had that support, whether it was like through friends, whether it was like my parents encouraging me. So yeah.
And what did your parents do for a living growing up?
So my dad was, it's actually a really cool story now that I think about it, but he started off as like a manufacturing, he worked in a manufacturing plant. I can't remember, it's like making car parts or something. And it was kind of a dangerous job because I know that one time he like went to the hospital and he got like, he actually had to stay there for a couple of days. I was pretty young, so I don't really remember what happened. But I think because of that, like he also decided to go back and get a technical degree. So he now does, he's a mechanic, and he also is able to give like pass an inspector, like car inspector. And my mom stayed in, she also works in the manufacturing, mostly like food places. Like her last job was like a chips place, and now she works at like a pet food place. And I now that I'm like thinking about it, because I had this conversation with a friend like a couple years ago, that how like how my dad going back to school, and I didn't know it at the time because I was so young, but I think that was also like such a big like push to be like for me to go back to school, because like for him to go back when he already has kids, when he's in his like 30s and stuff like that, like that's a big step for anyone. And he's always been the type of person who's like always like or both of my parents are like the type of people who are always like, do more for yourself, like grow, like don't ever be satisfied with something that you're unhappy with, like continue to think forward, so that you can get to where you want to be and you can get to be happy.
And do you have any siblings?
Yeah, I have a sister, an older sister, and she also, yeah, so she was born in Jersey. I think she was very like, we call her like the guinea pig basically, because she went through everything first. And she was actually like the first of all the cousins on my dad's side to go to an actual college, but like leave home. Like I've had some of my older cousins do community college and stay in Bethlehem. She's been the first one to leave. So she was like, she learned English. Spanish was like both our first language, but she learned English and on her own because my mom couldn't help her. So she was an ESOL for like up until high school, but because she already was learning, she's 2 years older than me, she was helping me in school, so I never was an ESOL. And so it kind of like, she passed down kind of her knowledge, and that I think helped me get into a college and then be able to leave. Well, so what happened with her was that she did community college and then she went to Temple. So she left after like 2 years, whereas I went like immediately to college. But I think it was just for her, like it was, she had a lot more of a challenging time kind of getting into that because of the ESOL, like the not really knowing what it takes to get into college, like what she needs to do in high school and stuff like that. And so she kind of passed on that knowledge to me, and like I try and pass down that same knowledge to my younger cousins now too, who are in high school.
Yeah. And how do you think that kind of because I guess your age gap isn't that big, so how do you think that kind of influenced the way that things kind of played out throughout high school? Because I'm sure you guys were in high school kind of at the same time.
Yeah. So she was, when I was a freshman, she was a junior, and then when I was a sophomore, she was a senior. So we had similar friend groups because she was also involved in Latino leadership. So I believe like she was like brought in by friends, and then my sister brought me into that group of students. And so we were all like, we all had like mutual friends. And I think that part before where I said like we would all encourage each other, even like older peers would help encourage or tell you, or even communicate things like, oh, you should take this class because this professor is great. Like you should consider this route or anything like that. Like it, yeah. So yeah.
And then how about like elementary school? So you mentioned like ESOL and stuff, like you kind of had the chance to kind of avoid that. So what about like, what differences did you see, at least in terms of your education in comparison to hers growing up in the same school system, but in different, I guess, arenas?
Yeah, I think I was able to like immerse myself a lot more into like making friends and stuff because of the fact that I didn't have to go through that. And I think she had to kind of like, she would be pulled out of like class or be placed with different students who, because of the language barrier. My cousin also was the same way because she was also an ESOL. She immigrated here. And I just think it was just like a much easier time for me. Like I've never had to think about like not understanding school. Like school to me was really easy. And I don't think it's because for her it was that she wasn't like as intelligent or as hardworking. I just think there was that barrier of like the additional step of like having to learn English more, or having to do things on her own, or learn things on for her as the first daughter. Because also it's not just English, but it's also even like I mentioned, my parents never like, they graduated high school, my dad did, my mom never did, but they didn't have that education past like a certain, like after elementary school. I think my dad, he was really good at math, so he would always like encourage us to do math. But I think after like elementary school, when you kind of get into more of the higher level, like, and then in high school, like the trigonometry, all that stuff, like he was not able to help us because he didn't have that knowledge. So, and I think math was the topic that he was able to help us the most with, because it can be kind of universal despite like the language. But like things like history, things like English, things like science, because he didn't really he wasn't good in science when he was like in high school, or that wasn't like taught the same way.
Yeah. And then what about like memories, like let's say growing up, doesn't have to be school related, it can be like, related to maybe like a holiday, or maybe like some special occasions that you guys celebrated. Like what's something that like sticks out to you from your childhood or your adolescence years?
Yeah, so the first thing I thought of literally when you were saying this, because I was actually reminiscing about this a little bit ago, because my grandma's like anniversary of when she passed away. So just kind of thinking about her. So she lived in Southside. We didn't. We lived on a different side. So there was she was around more of the Latino population, and like most grandmas, like who spoil their grandchildren and stuff, like she would always like come over, or like she used to babysit us when we were younger, and she would send us home with like some money, and like my dad would get so mad and be like, why are you like, you don't give her your money, like she's fine, she's a little kid. And or we would even like every single time I went over, we would always go to like a little bodega and buy like some ice cream or something, and my dad's like, why are you giving her so like all these sweets, like she doesn't need all this. And like she would still like do it because she was trying to show love to me, and in her own way of buying us things and giving us things and stuff.
What role would you say that so in this case it would be like your extended family, so what role do you think that your extended family kind of played in terms of like how you kind of view life, growing up?
That's hard because I also, being 100% honest too, it's like it wasn't always the most healthiest relationships among our family. And I think a lot of that has to do with like how we all left our home country. Like that's not easy to do. You leave everything you know. And they were like around my age or a little younger. And I can't even imagine like anywhere in that age to leave and what that means to you and how that changes you, and to come to a country that you don't really find where you belong. And even to this day, I feel like my mom still kind of struggles with that. And like, I think what happens then is that you have these like trauma responses, and you are so focused on things like showing off like your material things and stuff. So I think I didn't realize it as much when I was younger, but there definitely have things that like have not always been the healthiest. But when I was like a kid, and before I was able to kind of think about more of these things, like I was definitely like super close to my cousins, like to this day, super close to my cousins. Like we would always have like family parties, and back in the day when my parents would like have us be up till like 3 in the morning, and we would just be like hanging out, playing video games, like and it like we don't have as many family parties because I feel like they're kind of like tired of it, but like that definitely was very fundamental, and like the cousins getting to be so close and still be close to this day. I don't think I was super particularly close to any of my uncles and aunts. They're all like super caring people, but I think it was more like my grandparents. And so my grandma from my dad's side, I've known her for as long as like my memory goes back, because I was always like around her. She passed away actually when I was in, I think, like sophomore year of high school, which was really hard, because she actually passed away from a stroke. So it was just kind of like out of nowhere. And like a lot of us were not able to actually like say goodbye to her. And on my mom's side, my two grandparents immigrated when I was like I think I was like 6th grade. So, and they came to live with us, which was really fun, because I loved having them. And they were both very like much like my grandma on my dad's side, where they're always like spoil me and stuff. And then eventually, my uncle also immigrated and lived with us. And I didn't take him. Like I was a little bit more reserved. I was like, who's this stranger? And he always tells me the story of how like I put salt in his sheets to kind of like be mean and like just be like, who are you? Like, I don't want you to be comfortable in my house. Yeah, but eventually like he became like, we got really close. Like he's such a like a jokester. And so like he immigrated here actually, but he like crossed the border. So unfortunately he did get deported, which was really hard for my family and for my grandparents and my mom. But he was probably here for like a year or two, and he lived with us for like a year and two, and that was a good experience.
Right. And then can you like tell me about like you mentioned, you're like your cousins, and you're starting to, kind of pass down the knowledge to them. So how would you say that in even like within your family, or even in like, your town or your hometown or whatever, like how do students like prepare for college, or do they at all? Or what kinds of paths do people take, once, that time in high school comes around?
So my high school was pretty big. So we had like 600 I believe 600 people who graduated. So like it really depended. There were people who were very focused on like graduating, getting into college, and people like competing to get to the best schools. There were our school district also had like a technical school, so there was also like a push to kind of like get kids to go there if they didn't like wanna get a degree, so that at least they could have some skills out of college or out of high school. Yeah, I don't really know too much about it. I don't think I thought about it too much like in high school, like what other kids were doing outside of like my friend group, because I think I surrounded myself with a lot of like people who were like, I'm gonna go to college type of thing, because that was like motivating to me. Yeah, I think so. But I do, in my family, I do see like my cousins, my two older cousins, they went to community college. Then they also eventually went to continue to get like another degree. So like a technical degree and then like a bachelor's degree. And then my sister did the community college. I did the college experience of leaving. And now my younger cousin, who's a senior now, she is also doing like the college, like leaving experience. And I think that a lot of that, like it kind of like progressed in my mind, at least that's what it looks like, how it progressed, like the knowledge was passed down so that we knew what to do to get into like a really good college or get scholarships and stuff like that. And I have even younger cousins now on my mom's side, like babies even, that like I'm passing knowledge on to my cousin who's in 9th grade and saying like, take these classes, like you gotta keep your GPA up, you gotta focus on like your grades and stuff, and focus on like teaching her study habits and stuff like that, and how to, you know, get good grades. And it's working, because she was like, she was kind of failing out of like 8th grade a little bit, but now she has like and now she's her first marking period of this year, she had like a 3.8. So like and I'm glad she's listening, and like we lecture her a lot. And we lectured our one cousin that just she's getting college acceptances. So it's like, I'm glad to see that they're listening, because at the end of the day, like it comes down to them to make that decision for themselves. Like I can tell you all the things and you don't have to listen to me. But I think they do see like my older cousins and my sister and I and what we have built, and are able to like be like, I want that too. Like I want to have that freedom that like our parents don't necessarily get or haven't been able to find from a degree, or like certain like a different lifestyle of not having to struggle through working like hard labor jobs and stuff.
Right. And then kind of going off of that, like, do you remember kind of growing up what the different things were that, you know, you would say, oh, when I grow up, I want to be this, or when I grow up, I want to be that? Like, do you remember all the different things that you kind of had your mind set on?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to be a vet at first because I loved animals, and I still do. I do really love animals. All my family, actually, they were like farmers basically in their home country. So it was always just kind of like they would talk about like the land that they would have, or like even some of them still have like land, still have animals and stuff like that. So I think I'm probably in like elementary school, I wanted to be a vet. I don't think I thought about it in middle school too much. But in high school, when I was thinking about it, I was definitely thinking like, I definitely want to be in a field that is like helping support people. So I was looking into healthcare. I was looking into being a doctor. That didn't work out for this whole other thing. And I ended up being in like nonprofit, so still helping people.
And then now kind of shifting over and talking more about like, you know, Penn State and just kind of how you ended up there. So one, how did you even come to find out about Penn State? Like, I get you're from Pennsylvania, but like, how were you even exposed to it? Did you apply to any other schools? And ultimately, like, what made you decide to even attend Penn State?
Yeah. So I actually applied, I believe, to 2 schools because I was just convinced that it was like either Penn State or Rutgers. I didn't do Rutgers because Rutgers was actually my dream school, but they didn't give me like any sort of support, and I had to pay out of state tuition. I was like, I'm not doing that. That's too much. I don't think I did the research I needed to do, honestly, when it came to schools, because I kind of was like, okay, these, like, I spoke to these people, I did tours at Penn State. I actually really love Penn State because of the town vibe and like the community vibe. So I was like, okay, if it's not Rutgers, I'm really happy with Penn State too. But like, I was not the one that to be like, I'm gonna apply to all the schools and find out like da 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 da, which I don't think was the smartest thing in terms of like seeing what schools would actually offer me like some sort of scholarships and stuff, because I also did pretty well in school. So I wasn't, I definitely graduated like with some sort of honors. I don't entirely remember, but I don't entirely regret it, because I was also like, I didn't know, like I didn't fully understand the whole, I knew applying to colleges, but I just wasn't thinking, or my parents also, when they were always saying like go to college and stuff, once I got to that point, they're also saying like, don't worry about money, like you take out loans, that's fine, like you'll pay it back type of thing. And that sounded great back then, not so great now, but so just kind of I just applied. They also came to my high school, because there's actually a Penn State Lehigh Valley, so they sent some people from there, and they also were, I believe they may have sent people from University Park as well. And so I was just talking to them, and I heard so much about it, like it's Penn State, like it's the state school for Pennsylvania, so like you just always like, I always knew about it, and I visited and I loved it. And just I got in and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to Penn State. Yeah, and I started off, I got in the College of Eberly, and I didn't end up graduating from the College of Eberly.
That's okay. It's no worry, because clearly you graduated already, so it doesn't even make a difference. What did it feel like? Okay, so you accepted your decision, you made your, you said, okay, I'm gonna go to Penn State. Packing up your car, like, or stuffing whatever, like packing your bags, whatever. What did it feel like to finally make that move? Like physically go to State College and stay there?
Oh my gosh. I don't remember packing. I'm the type of person who like will wait like last minute to pack, because I hate it. So it was not planned at all. Like it was like 100% like stuff things, or like not thinking ahead. I think my mom was, she always packs for me like extra things like cough medicine in case I get sick, a thermometer, all that stuff. Like she had that ready for me. But so there was orientation too in the middle of that. I remember that because I can remember like taking a picture with the lion. But the drive there, I remember it was raining the day I moved in. And I think in like movies and stuff, that's supposed to mean change. And I posted on Twitter. I was like, this is so weird that I'm like moving in at the same time that it's raining, like life changes type of thing. My parents were there. I don't think my sister was there because I think she was starting school. And they were like super emotional about it. Like I'm pretty sure my mom cried, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it feels like so long ago, so I don't entirely remember, but there was definitely a lot of emotions, like a lot of like, and because I didn't know what college looked like either, it was just kind of like, oh crap, this is happening. Like what do I do? I guess I'm here, like taking it day by day type of thing.
And then what about like the impressions that you had about the school? So let's say like let's see, before orientation, after orientation, and then maybe after your first semester? Like, what were your impressions? And then do you think that your overall experience there lived up to those, you know, impressions or expectations that you had?
Oh, okay. So orientation, don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember like they separated us in groups basically. Like they did, I think they did like their whole like overall giving everyone like a lecture type of thing. I also remember my dad had to take off, which usually he like his like manual labor jobs aren't very flexible sometimes. So like he was like, it was like such a big deal that he took off to like drive with me to Penn State. And then he went to some of the parent stuff, which I don't think he fully understood because like English isn't his first language. But then they separated us. Wait, was that orientation? No, that I think was that. Yeah, I think that was orientation. I'm sorry, I'm like so many occasions that I feel like before I actually went to Penn State. But when they separated us, I didn't fully like engage in the group as everyone else. Like I was trying to. And I think that was my first experience of like kind of a culture shock. And I didn't realize at the time. I was like, okay, maybe it's just like the people or I don't know, like I just didn't really vibe with the group. But like later on I came to realize that it was like, okay, it's kind of a culture shock and like the PWI, like I'm not used to this environment and like who I'm around and like maybe potentially not always fitting in. I think that's mostly what I remember from orientation. Coming in, I actually was at East for a week and I left because I was with an RA because I think I accepted a little late. So I ended up moving to Pollock, but I kind of had that same experience with the people on my floor where I kind of didn't fully feel like I fit in fully. And I think Pollock definitely changed that. But it kind of like, that was not what I had expected like at first, because when I first visited like the tours and like the tours I went into, like everyone's a community, it's a college town, like da 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 da, and then like the first year even, like I didn't fully feel like I found where I had like felt comfortable or felt like I belonged, and like it was definitely like a bit of a struggle, and I think it did also like affect kind of my academics and like my willingness to kind of want to be there. But then at the same time, I also started to find like the Latino community, which helped me kind of find more of that feeling of like belonging. I think not so much freshman year. I got really involved my sophomore year, but freshman year, I think I was around like certain like my sister's best friend from high school, who I also knew, she went to Penn State too. So she like helped me kind of get a little bit involved in Latino community. So like if there's an event, she would bring me out. So I kind of had like my small experiences, and like I eventually realized that like, okay, like this was like the community that I was going into, like I felt a lot more comfortable with. So like let me get more involved in that, and I did eventually like sophomore year.
So would you say, let's say the first year, I feel like you kind of already answered this, but in your first year, do you think people had an understanding of your culture, like where you came from, like all that stuff?
No.
And then when do you think that shift happened? Or do you ever think that people that you've met at Penn State understand your culture?
It was so like the person I had, my roommate, like she was into like frat life or sorority life, but like the one that's like big in Penn State, not like the people of color Greek life. And so she was doing like pledging and all this stuff, and I was like, so like it was hard for me to relate to her or be friends with her or find something in common, because she was so into that. And I was just like, I just didn't really care for that. And even in my classes, when I'm like the only person of color, like it was like kind of hard. Or even lectures, like I don't think I was because I was in Eberly, so they're big lectures, so it wasn't necessarily that I was like the only person of color, but it was like I feel like I wasn't able to make friends as easily because there was just kind of like a cultural learning curve. I honestly don't really know too much because like I had grown like around diversity, like all types of races and ethnicities, and something about like my freshman year, like I didn't feel like I was able to kind of be like myself, or like was able to approach other people type of thing. And it like, what was that second question?
I was gonna say, did you ever feel as if people understood your culture ever? I mean, broadly speaking, I would say.
I think overall as a school, no. I think in the smaller communities of like the Latino communities and the people of color communities, yes. But I think for the majority of my time there, like I just never could make friends, even like in classes, like very rarely. And if I did, usually it was a person of color, unfortunately. Like that I wasn't able to branch out. Yeah, there's
Yeah. Yeah, I get it. Like I genuinely get it, because I feel like that's the same kind of experience for me. Like you kind of just you find the one other person of color in the room, you sit next to that person.
Yeah. And I don't know, I don't fully understand it either, because I also, like I said, like it's not that I didn't have like white friends in high school. Like I had all sort of like friends from all races and ethnicities, and something about Penn State, and that was such a culture shock that like I was like, what? And I'm not gonna lie, also too, like I think part of it also, like I did come across some individuals who were like racist, or who were like not fully trying to be my friend, or would like also give me microaggressions because so there was like for science, for chemistry, there was like a 1-credit class to like help students who are not struggling for science, but it was just kind of, or with chemistry, but it was just giving you like extra work to do so that you could do better in class. And one of like the first weeks there, one of the girls that I was in a group with, she kind of like didn't give me the time of day, didn't like allow me to participate in the group. And I still remember it to this day, because I feel like it's like that very first Penn State experience where I was like, not only did like I not feel like I belonged, but I was kind of like shunned a little bit. Like I was like, that was like purposely like giving me attitude type of thing. And like that I mean, that was really hard, because I didn't like, I've never really experienced that, like, or felt that badly that I didn't belong or that I wasn't accepted.
Yeah. And then like how did you kind of, work through that? Because I feel like sometimes like you don't really realize that things are going on until it's like after, like way later, like even now, like it's like, oh, like at the time I didn't even realize that was a microaggression. So it's like when you kind of came to those realizations, like how did you kind of center yourself, or how did you find support, and what kept you grounded, I guess, to your roots is another question.
Yeah, I would say my freshman year I didn't. Unfortunately, I think I didn't know it at the time, but I definitely think I was in like a depression like episode of like, I would be in my room the majority of my time. Like I was like, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know where to make friends type of thing. I was dating someone like long distance too, so it kind of was like, okay, like he would encourage me to like go make friends, but I was like, no, I don't, I'm fine, like, because I just didn't know. And it was also just heartbreaking to always go out or like try to make friends and like struggle to do that. So it, and it, I, that's kind of where the like people of color, like Latino community, like going to those events, like, and feeling more of, more at peace in those spaces, that I slowly started like going, and getting involved. And that was, you know, everyone would also like have that same experience. Like it was talked about a lot that like there's a community, like we're community outside of like Penn State. Like everyone thinks of Penn State as like this football community, like this small town, like happiest, you know, Happy Valley, happiest place on earth. But then there's also this community who's kind of like ostracized or like coming together because they have similar experiences of not feeling like they can belong.
And then how would you say that you kind of stayed grounded in State College? Because I feel like State College doesn't really provide like the space to feel connected to your culture and things like that. So what kinds of things did you seek out, or what did you find in State College that, you know, kind of was like, okay, I can get down with this?
Yeah. Honestly, I literally like, especially my freshman year, like the Latino community, like and I keep saying that because it was so like important for me to even stay at Penn State, because there, you know, there's so many thoughts about like, I don't belong. I don't want to be here. Like, why am I spending so much time? Like, let me just look at other schools and transfer. Like, it also was kind of affecting my grades too, because I was like not feeling as if I was enough. And so, and on top of that too, like Eberly, like the beginner like lectures, a lot of them are readout classes. And I remember reading this article recently about how like readout classes, like the majority of people who fall through are people of color or people lower income, like people who don't have the resources. And so like I was definitely one of those people who was like falling behind a little bit, and I was like struggling with like chemistry especially. And I think part of it too was that like I wasn't always like pushing myself to study, because I already like had this voice in the back of my head that was like, it doesn't matter how much you study, like you're not going to be able to like learn this, you're not going to be able to do good. And that was never anything that I grew up in high school like super motivated to like do well in school. And so like I 100% like believe that part of it is because it was just not me being in a healthy space that was encouraging to me. It was like the institution, it was like my classes, it was my professors, even like these like memories that are like popping up as I'm talking about it. Like there was I can't remember which science course it was. I know it was a science course. My professor, her first language was in English, so she had an accent, and there's students behind me who were like making fun of her accent. Literally my first semester, like, and so like she was Asian, but like still like it's like how that still like resonated with me in a way that like just kind of made me feel so crappy. Like, why am I trying so hard if there's going to be so many people trying to tear me down, and like I can't even, like struggling to like do well in these readout courses. Like, and also who do I go to? Because a lot of students also like I heard students be like, oh yeah, like my dad is helping me with like my homework, and I was like, I can't do that. Like I can't or I can't even ask them for like tutors because they don't have the money to afford tutors. Like they're helping me get through college as it is, like, and it was just like it was really, honestly, like freshman year, like it was really tough. But that, and I think there's a larger reason why I also just ended up leaving, changing majors, because it was just too much. Like I was just so, like, I was not able to get past that, like thinking so badly about myself, not getting the support that I needed. That like my sophomore year, I think it was the 4th semester, I was basically failing all my classes. Like I had to withdraw because I was like, it was OChem basically, because everyone always tells you like OChem is so hard, and I let that get to my head, and I just didn't study because I was like, I'm never gonna be able to do this. Like and there was no one there to be like, you can do it. In a large lecture class, like it's not like I could go to the professor doesn't care. And they're making it purposely hard for you. Like with the weed out classes, they want people to drop out. And it's like, how, like, why is that okay to not be encouraging students, you know? And it just, at some point, I hit a breaking point, and I just withdrew, and like, I changed my major, and that was it. Like my dream of being a doctor was like gone. But like,
right.
Also at that point too, it was like, when I think about it now, I'm like, okay, maybe that kind of did like push me down a little bit, but I don't entirely know if I would have wanted to do 4 years of medical school, but it still didn't give me the chance, you know what I mean? Like I could have still been in science or done something else, or a PA, or I don't know. I mean, I still could if I wanted to, but that's not in my cards.
What did you end up majoring in? And then once you switched, you know, your course, your academic course, what would you say was, you know, your easiest class, your hardest class, if you can remember this? And do you remember kind of like going through like the motions of like, okay, like studying and things like that? Like, where did you find yourself, you know, like doing that intentional, like, okay, I'm gonna get to business?
So when I came back my junior year, basically, I was like, nah, like I need to get my life together, because the past 2 years my grades weren't the best. And I switched to health administration, health policy administration, sorry, I forgot. But so it was definitely easier, still in the healthcare field, because I was so convinced that I was like, I'm gonna still stay in healthcare, I'm gonna still help people, but help in another way, like I'll do admin, whatever. The intro classes were definitely easy because I like had already taken like intro gen eds, and like that, like those are pretty easy. I think the hardest class for me, and it was again because I was psyching myself out so much, was there was a required, you were required to have an internship with the major, but there was like a pre-class that taught you like how to write cover letters, how to do your resume, how to network, how to apply to internship type of thing. And I actually dropped it the first time I took it, because I literally, same thing as like before, I was like, I barely tried, and I didn't know it at the time, but like now that I'm thinking about it, like, and going through therapy, like it was because I was just literally like, I can't do it. Like it was just so intimidating, because we're talking about like post college type of things. Like this is stuff that I need to know to be able to get a job. And like I definitely dropped it the first time. The second time I was fine. Also because I already went through the majority of the class. So it was like, okay, yeah, just like resubmit it, or like polish it a little bit and then resubmit it. Like, but yeah, it was, I think that comes back to like what we were talking about before, about how like we were like kind of like the first people to do things, and I didn't always know, like after graduating, or even some of high school, it's like kind of taking things step by step, because I never really knew what things were like, or like I didn't have parents to like have examples of like growing up and being like, oh yeah, like they're doctors or they're professionals here, and like it just always felt like I was so like, what's the word, like imposter syndrome type of thing. And I would just let it like get to my head like so much. I didn't struggle as much, I feel like, with the major. It was just that class or any class that had to do with like more serious career stuff that I would psych myself out. But I got through it like after I dropped it the first time. I guess like I needed to do that, but
it was just a part of the journey, you know?
yeah.
It was just a part of it was a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And then what about like state college area? So, you know, obviously like some people, you know, have to work, you know, or, you know, to be able to put themselves to school. So did you ever find yourself, you know, having a job, so either on campus, off campus, through internships or things like that? Like, so more career side now, like kind of looking at that, like, did you find yourself having to go through those type of motions while you were in school?
Yeah, so I didn't have a job, and that was again with my parents being like, don't get a job, just focus on school, like just graduate. Like that's all they ever wanted from me in life. They were just like always like, if you graduate, I'm gonna be the happiest person in the world. And they were like, so they helped me to some extent, like with like money and stuff, like if I need money for food type of thing. When I was in college, not so much tuition because that's expensive, but so I didn't have a job, no jobs during college, but I had to have that internship. I feel like I also wanted to get like certain internships during the summer. Oh wait, hold on, I did get a job actually. Sorry. So not during school, but during like winter breaks, summer breaks, and spring break, I actually ended up working with my mom. So she works in like manual labor. So it was just basically like packaging stuff. And it was actually kind of rough because it was 10-hour shifts. And at the time I was like 110 pounds, 120 pounds by the time I graduated senior year. And they were paying like $10 an hour. It was like no experience needed type of thing. So it was just also, I didn't drive at the time too. So it was like, okay, my mom already works there, so I can go with her. But it was like, honestly, it was really rough because I would go work the 10 hours, come home, eat dinner, go to sleep, and wake up again. And I was like, I don't know how I did it. I was just pushing through, and I was like, you just need this money, like, so you don't have to always ask your parents for food. And I did that, like, I think probably like 3/4 of the breaks that I've had. And then there was the internship. But at some point I did want to I wanted to do more than just the required internship, but the same thing as before, where I like psych myself out. Like the required one was like, okay, I really need to get one. So like, you can't, like, you need this to graduate. But I think so I did that my junior year. Was it my junior year? Yeah. And I think my sophomore year I was also trying to look at something, and it's not necessarily like an internship, but like maybe something working in healthcare or something, but that didn't work out. But yeah, I think that was, most of the jobs that I had as an undergrad. Oh, and then like the internship was at the local hospital near me, Lehigh Valley Health Network, and I was a cultural competency intern. So we were working on like basically how the doctors and like the actual hospital itself can communicate more efficiently with like people of other ethnicities and races and stuff, and making sure that people got the best care, because not everyone communicates the same way, or like even things like religion can prevent them from doing certain procedures or taking certain medications and stuff, and how to like navigate those things and how to support patients for whatever they need.
And then sorry, excuse me. What was kind of different or hard about living in state college? So not just Penn State, but like state college in general. Like what was different or challenging from like your hometown? What were some of the differences, whether it was cultural differences or just differences in in terms of living environment that you noticed? And then what things did you find in State College for fun? Or what things did you find in State College that you just really hated?
Yeah. State College. So I guess lack of diverse foods was definitely like the one thing that I was like, especially because I grew up eating, my mom was the type of person that was like, I'll cook, there's food in the house, like we're not eating out type of thing. So I grew up eating her food the majority of my life. And then to come here and eat like burgers for like or whatever the our dining halls are offering, it was just kind of like, oh, this is something I would usually eat like maybe like once a week, once a month, depending on what it is, like what, because we would eat out on the weekends, but back home. And then now it was just kind of like a different, I don't think I was ever like happy with the food that I was eating when I was at Penn State up until I got like a kitchen and I was able to make my own food. And I don't really think too much about State College outside of like Penn State and then downtown, I feel like. Because I didn't really venture out too much outside of that. So, but downtown was really small compared to like Lehigh Valley. Also, like there's, even though like Bethlehem is like, it's not a city, but it's definitely bigger than State College. And then there's Allentown, and then Easton and all that, and like everything. Even here, like we're still really close to like Philly. We're still really close to like New York, and State College is close to Pittsburgh. And I'm like, I've never been to Pittsburgh. Like, it was weird. Like it was just not like I wasn't used to the town part of it, like the smaller town part, but I also didn't think too much about it because there was still Penn State. Like I feel like you still were able to exist in that bubble and kind of be okay type of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what about for fun? Like what things did you find to do in State College for fun? If you did, I mean, if you ain't, like, I understand if you didn't find anything. So
well, when I was 21, there's the bar life, like, which downtown was, you know, most of it. I don't know, just meeting up with friends, I feel like, and that I think that's so different from now. It's just so easy to like, because everyone is so close to each other. Like it's, you just hit someone up and be like, oh, do you want to go grab dinner? And they're like, yeah, like I'll meet you in like whatever. Or it was just so easy just to kind of find something to do, whether it was just hang out, go to the bar, like but I think that's also, I feel like it was so going out heavy because there was nothing else to do. Like it wasn't like I could go visit a museum, like, or go do some like more touristy things, or because there was literally like downtown nightlife for the most part.
and that's it. That's all there is to do.
That's college, I feel like, most
Literally.
places also.
And what about extracurriculars? So what types of things were you involved in? What things were your favorite? What things did you like not care for really? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Latino Caucus. There was also like a whole bunch of other like Latino clubs that I was also kind of involved with. Never took on like leadership positions, but I was like going to their events, to their general body meetings, and we were just all like friends. We would just all like go support each other. I think for the majority of my time there, that was like for extracurriculars, that was it. I did try eventually like trying to branch out and kind of do like, I think I like applied for something in the class gift thing, and the position I wanted, they ended up not giving to me, and it didn't feel right. Like they invited me to be part of the committee or something, but after the interview, like it just didn't. I had that same feeling of like, I don't necessarily know if I belong, and I don't necessarily want to put myself through this. So I'm just gonna come back to my to Latino Caucus and just kind of like do this instead. So sophomore year, I got involved in some of their committees. So Nosotros Somos, which was like a event that would highlight, like it was like an actual event at one of the halls, which I can't even remember the names of anymore. Alumni Hall, I think it was. No, it's the other one, Heritage Hall. So it was like a big event, and they were just highlighting like 3 countries, and they had dancers, and they had music and food and all that. Then still sophomore year, but the year at the spring semester, I was the fundraising chair for Noche Latina. And then eventually I did become director for Noche Latina, like my junior year. My super senior year, I was VP for Latino Caucus. And then, so there was actually, there was like a leadership program. It goes by a different name now at Penn State, but it started off with the United States Hispanic Leadership Institute, I believe that's what it's called. So they basically have this program where they go to different colleges and they have like a leadership program. So it's a collaboration between the college and the institution or the institute, and they have requirements, and then they try and kind of bring in Penn State stuff. So like we were talking to administrators, so that part was left up to Penn State to kind of like bring in those administrators or who they felt was important for us to kind of meet. And because of that, they also they have a conference. It's the biggest Latino undergrad conference in the US. And so a good majority of us who went through that leadership program was able to go, and I was able to go, which was like probably the most wonderful experiences I had as an undergrad, because it was like all Latinos, all people like trying to professionals trying to support undergrads. I think that program ended up not continuing with the institute, but after that experience, I was like I think that's my senior year, that I also fundraised money to take more students to that conference, because it was just so beneficial, like for myself and the people who went the first time, that I was like, okay, we need to do it again. And I think they did it again the year after I graduated, because it was just like there's so many people. Like I also met like Dolores Huerta, like I can't remember her name, the one of the like a mayor and from Puerto Rico, I forget her name, honestly, can't think of it, but just like a whole bunch of people, like politicians, like people who are very influential to the Latino community in the US. And then they also had a whole bunch of like smaller lectures for everyone, so that they can kind of like get to learn from professionals, and not just like any professional, but like professionals that in your field that you wanted to go to. So it was so like such a great experience.
And then kind of thinking back to the question I asked you earlier about like any special memories, do you have any special memories? So other than the conference, because you did mention that, other than the conference, do you have any special memories that you can kind of think back and like, oh, that was a good day, or oof, that was a bad day?
In terms of like Penn State as a whole, or like extracurriculars?
Yeah, Penn State as a whole. As a whole. So either if it is tied to an extracurricular, cool. If it's not, cool. Like, oh.
Yeah, I feel like I've blocked out like the majority of like academics and stuff. Like I'm like that stuff. Like I powered through it. I did what I needed to do, and the thing that I took the most away about Penn State is like the friends I made, the things I was involved in because of my friends who were also involved in it. So it was very based around like a Latino community at Penn State. So just like when I think of memories, I think of like just the experiences I had with them, whether it was like putting together an event, like and there's multiple events throughout like the time at Penn State. There was also a club that a whole bunch of like South American individuals from South America that came together my junior year. And that was like the first time like we kind of brought that representation to Penn State, and that was really nice to kind of be part of and to help bring up. And we had this like Carnival event, which was so much more successful than we thought it would be. Like we thought we would get like a couple people, and then there were like maybe like 30 to 40 people who came through throughout that whole like couple hours that we had it. And just, I don't know, it was just like everything that was like built, because it just also came from scratch, because like we didn't have the resources. Like everything we did was like we fundraised ourselves, we planned ourselves, we found if we were inviting food, if we were or inviting people, if we had food, like we were the ones who was planning all of it. And so just kind of being able to do that with individuals, being able to connect and then see that like happen together, and then that bringing us together to then be close friends afterwards and like do things outside of Latino Caucus, like do things like hang out, go out, study together type of thing. Like it was so like it was a community, honestly. Like it was like and I think that's like something that I'm so used to like from back home. It's like the family, like the community, like of people just looking out for everyone, just coming together, just celebrating and putting, you know, building something together. Like I feel like that there are so many great people that I met because of that. And like that I think is like there's not one memory, it's just so many like memories. And the fact that I also am so close to so many of those people still, like like that continues to like live on.
And then we're starting to kind of wrap up, but one first question is, what do you think that the institution could do to better help Latino students? What could it do to make Penn State or university life better? Either back then or things that you've you know, witnessed even now. And then the second question is, do you feel pride for being a Penn Stater?
I don't even know, because sometimes I feel a little discouraged with like Penn State and the way they've handled any sort of like racism, or like even historically, like before I've been there, like there have been things that just like haven't changed, and to this day like things are not properly addressed. Things are ignored, or it's like, yeah, whatever, like rather than kind of like actually taking a look and being like, you know what, like there are students, there are people who are part of this school, part of like alumni that aren't necessarily like the kindest people in the world and can be discriminatory. Like, and I don't think we're at that point to kind of keep people accountable or have those like really difficult conversations, because I think a part of it also too is like losing some support, right? Like there's some people who are so like that's something that they don't want to let go of, that like Penn State needs to be willing to stand firm on that and potentially lose like alumni or the support and stuff. And I don't think they're at that point. I don't think they were when I started. I guess they're getting kind of better, but it just feels like it keeps happening until it's truly addressed, like, and talked about and discussed. I don't know. And the question about pride, I'm like, I don't entirely say I can, because I didn't have the best academic experience. Like, I didn't have the support I needed. If I got support, it was from peers. And I don't think that's entirely what should happen. Like, yeah, peer support, of course, like, that's part of the experience, but I also paid so much damn money to get an education, to have struggled so much. It's like that, like, why is that a thing? Why, if it's happening to me, it's happening to a lot of people. I've heard so many people talk about it. Like, why is that accepted? Why is that okay? Like, why aren't we doing more about it? Why aren't, as an institution? And there are some great people too, like at Penn State, like administrators and stuff, who are really doing the work to try and help support students. But those are just like one instances, right? Like, those administrators aren't going to be able to interact with every single person, every person of color who may be struggling through their like time at Penn State. Like, it needs to be an institution, like, it needs to be a value of Penn State to be able to provide that support, right? And that means looking, and then like, once you get to that point of being like, okay, that's a value, like, then you look at things like, okay, maybe like readout classes are not the best thing in the world, because we are getting, having people fall under the cracks. And who is that? People of color. Like, maybe we need to revisit certain things that we've done for so long, because it's not helping people out. I don't know. It's a hard thing, because it's like, I love the people I met my time there, but it's also so sad that the majority of the people I've become close to is because we struggled so much during our time at Penn State.
It's like institutional change needs to happen before you can say with a hard certain yes, if that makes sense.
Because it's like, it's also like, if it happened to me, if it happened to so many people, it's still happening today. Like, it's like, what, like, I don't know.
Yeah. And just kind of a closing out question, so that we don't end kind of like on a not sad note, but like on a darn you school note. What person or group or whatever, this is just speaking broadly on your life, so it doesn't even have to be related to the institution, but what person has had the most positive influence on your life, and what did he or she do to influence you?
Yeah. My parents, definitely, but I think my mom, still says it to this day, and she's like, always be better than your dad and I, always push for growth, like, always think ahead, and always like give back, don't just think about yourself, like. And I know, like, they definitely were not able to give me everything that they wanted, because if they would have helped me through college and helped me through life even now. But that was like what they were able to meet me at, type of thing. And so they 100%.
Well, that concludes our interview.
Yay!